Hi everybody, this is Matt, and welcome to part 2 of the Introduction to Plasma Cutting video I started yesterday. Today we're going to talk about what makes a plasma cutter and what it does, essentially. Well, you can see right here, I have my torch disassembled. You have the hole in the center, which is where your contact tip goes. That provides your power, your electric arc. And around the outside of that you see holes for your airflow. Essentially, on a plasma cutter, you need a electric power source of some kind and an air source. Now, the air source can be one of multiple things. I'm using compressed air from a shop air compressor, so I'm making my own air. So one thing you'll have to have when you do that option is a good water trap or air dryer to get the moisture out. You do not want any moisture in your air when using a plasma cutter. Another option is compressed nitrogen gas. Some people use that. I have never used it before. That's an option you have. And then there is also the option for using oxygen. But like again, I've never used that. I use an air compressor for my air, and essentially my air is free that way. So first part we're going to look at, goes in your torch, is the contact tip, which would be that little piece right there. Now the contact tip creates your electric arc. It just screws into the head of your torch, and that's what arcs between the machine and the metal. And that was also what creates your plasma gas. That's what makes your electric arc to heat the air that's swirled around your contact tip, essentially. Next piece we have is the nozzle. The nozzle directs the flow of gas, and it sends it out a little hole in the center. You can see it in there. And that's what basically does your cutting. The size of that hole determines how wide the cut is, or the kerf. The next piece is a very important piece. This is called the swirl ring. It's hard to see it in this picture, but there are little holes along the edge of this ring. And that's what gets the air swirling around the contact tip. So it'll swirl it around, and that is what makes your cut, essentially. That swirled air swirling around the contact tip creates plasma gas. And then we have this piece here that just holds it all together. And that also has swirl holes on the bottom. And that's just your retainer ring, pretty much. Some additional accessories that we have also is this piece here for my Everlast Power Plasma 50. That's my plasma cutter I run. It's a 50 amp plasma cutter, and this is a CNC adapter port. You hook your wires from the CNC table through this side, hook them up on the prongs on the inside, and then that just plugs into the back of your machine, and you can make your torch an automated torch system. You have to buy a separate torch that Everlast does sell. Another addition is this standoff guide, which in a minute I will put this on the torch, put it all back together so you see what it looks like together. And that standoff guide, essentially it creates your standoff, so you don't have to worry about touching the metal, tearing up your contact tip and your nozzle. It sets it for you. It sets it at a stable height. You just put that straight down on the metal and drag it. And the next piece you have that came with my Everlast machine, and it don't necessarily come with every machine, but I'm pretty sure most of the Chinese machines will have these, especially if their contact tips have a flat side on it. And that's just basically your wrench. You put your contact tip in there snug, and then use that wrench just to snug it down a little tighter. The next pieces we have is the drag tip consumables, which I talked a little bit about in my first video. That has little ridges, and you essentially just set that straight down on the metal at low amperage, and you can drag your tip on the metal, and it keeps from messing up the hole in the center. It replaces this piece. You do not need this if you have the drag tip, or if you're steady with a regular standard consumable. And there's its contact tip. Now I will show you this because it kind of threw me when I first got them. The consumables are different sizes. The drag tip consumables are actually shorter in length, so it shortens your torch up a little bit. If you like to hold it a little closer to the metal, then these consumables are good for that. Also, from your machine you'll have a ground clamp. This came standard on my Everlast machine. Nice braided copper in there. Creates a good ground. Ground is only needed to conduct the electric current, and that is what directs your plasma gas to the metal. So that's all it's mainly used for. But we'll put this torch back together and let you see what it looks like whole, and we'll go from there. Okay, so first off, we've installed the contact tip in the torch head. Next, we will take the swirl ring, which you can see the nice groove on the nozzle, and the swirl ring correspond. So I like to put them on there and insert it into the retaining ring until it protrudes like that. This is the important step. To make sure that swirl ring stays where it needs to, I like to aim it straight down and insert the torch straight through the center. This is spring loaded, so you will need to apply some tension towards the torch head for the threads to take hold, and thread it down tight. And this torch is now installed correctly. To test that, all you have to do is pull the trigger, and if it actually starts cutting, then you know you are installed correctly. If you are installed incorrectly, the machine will tell you. Now, we talked about this standoff guide, and essentially you just put the torch, the retaining ring down inside, and it slides up on, and there's what it looks like. You see, it keeps a standoff for you. You cannot touch that nozzle. No matter how you rock it, how you lean it, that nozzle will not touch the metal at all. Now, this is good, especially if you're using a straight edge, but personally I do not prefer this method. There are other companies that make a set of dolly wheels and other kinds of standoff guides. I recommend one of those because preferred to this because they will roll a little smoother and make your cut a little neater. But you get used to this, then you could come out just as good, if not better, than using the dolly wheels. I don't use it unless I am using a straight edge of some kind. So, this is what the tip looks like with standard consumables. We'll swap this out with the drag tip consumables, and you can see the difference that is between the standard and the drag. Now, I have installed the drag tip consumables. You can see they're a lot shorter and a lot wider, and that is because it has the ridges around the bottom to give you a standoff to keep the orifice from getting plugged up, clogged off, and keep the sparks from just blowing back up into the torch and burning the hole up. Because once that hole in the center burns up, that tip is no longer good, and it'll start making ugly cuts, and you're going to have other issues to deal with. This, on low amperage, you can just start your arc and set it straight to the metal and drag it. You do not need that standoff guide for these consumables. These, I bought them in bulk. You can actually see the brand new contact tips and nozzles right there. I bought them fairly cheap off of offline. And so far I'm testing them out right now. I like the standard nozzle for the fact of visibility. You can see how it is sloped and it offers a little bit more visibility. That helps me a lot with the detail work. I don't necessarily need the drag tips. I just thought I'd give them a try. And because that's all I do pretty much is sheet metal cutting. I do cut up to 1/2 inch every once in a while, and when we get in our sphere fire pits, those are 3/16 wall, so almost 1/4 inch thick, and that's about the thickest I push this machine. Now here's another piece I forgot to mention. This is just a fuse, standard fuse you can find at a hardware store, automotive style. This is what goes on the front of the machine for the high frequency start, or the arc start. And I have not blown one of those yet. I've owned the machine for about 6 months now, and I have not had any issues other than the routine maintenance of changing contact tips and nozzles out. So I will say that I have not had an issue with this machine. Again, this is the Everlast Power Plasma 50. That's a 50 amp machine. I can cut up to 3/4 inch, I believe, fairly easily with it. I have not checked the ratings on it. But you do not need a machine this big for everything. And again, this is not one of the biggest machines on the market. There are machines that'll cut a lot bigger, but this is one that suits me very good. Now, we talked about plasma cutters. This is the power source. And here's where my torch lead hooks up, the ground clamp hooks up, and there's where the fuse goes. This does everything. This creates the electric arc, and the air regulator is built in, so it regulates the airflow. All I have to do is introduce the power to run the machine and the air. I'm running it on, like I said, an air compressor with compressed air. Here's my regulator. That regulator is set on 70 psi. The machine recommends anywhere from 60 to 70 psi for optimal cutting. I have it set on 70 right now, but when I use the machine, when you pull the trigger, it drops down to 65. So I'm right in the center of that sweet zone, and I find it to be a very efficient place to cut. If you don't have enough airflow, it won't cut as efficient, and it won't blow that metal away as nice as you would like it to. And it leads to a lot of dross, which is the buildup of the cool metal or slag underneath the cut. And if you go too slow, essentially it can join back together and keep your piece from falling away. But generally the dross will knock right off. Fairly simple. I said in my last video I like to use an air chisel and just chisel it away. It's a lot quicker for me, and I don't have to clamp the piece down. I can hold it instead of using a chisel. So I have a 220 power supply, but this machine is dual voltage, so it will run on a 110 power supply. And the good folks at Everlast did supply the machine with one of these pigtails to convert it from 220 to 110, and it has a hardwired in 220 prong on it. So you are ready to go straight from the factory. Now this machine, here's the air adjustment knob, and I will do a review on this machine later on. This is not just selling Everlast. I like the machine. I was just talking about the features, but this will adjust the air pressure up and down. If you have too much air pressure, you will destroy your consumables early. That is what I've experienced. The machine, you're only rated to run 90 psi into the machine. So I have the compressor set at 90 psi, but my work pressure is only 65 psi. Now this machine has the option for CNC torch, like I mentioned with the auxiliary plug. I have it set for manual torch, or 2T. You'll have an amp adjustment knob on every machine to adjust your amperage. Mine bottoms out at 19 amps and maxes out at 50. I've been cutting a lot of sheet metal here lately, so I bottomed it out at 19 amps, and that cuts it just fine. It has this green knob here. This is for post flow, or how long the air continues to rush around your contact tip after you cease the cut. I have it set at a few seconds. Sheet metal, I don't need a lot of post flow, but when we're cutting the spheres, sometimes I'll kick it over to constant flow, which is an option this machine has, and just keep air going constant. And when I'm cutting a large project out and I'm working on it, with this machine's high duty cycle, I usually leave it on constant flow just for the fact that I don't usually stop cutting for a long time. That's the nice thing about it. This machine is very compact. I mean, I'm not a big man by any measure, but I'm not a very small guy either. And it fits in my hand very easily. I believe it weighs only about 30 pounds. This is compared to a Hypertherm, this is a fairly good sized machine. They are very small machines. I've ran a few of them, and they weigh less than this, and they're a lot smaller than this. So, and this is just a mini fridge for reference, and you can see a 10-pound can of stick electrodes. So there's your reference point. I believe it's roughly about 10 inches tall, and I believe about a foot long or so. But yeah, this is like I said, generally about the size of a typical plasma cutter. And this is about the features you're going to have. Amperage, air. I've not seen a lot with post flow. Most of those are just set inside the machine internally. But it's a nice feature that Everlast threw on this machine. And then you're going to have an air hookup on the back, is where mine is at, along with a water trap. And the on-off switches on the back. Thank you for watching part 2 of this video. Please subscribe for more, and stay tuned for some other parts to follow.